Alright, we've spent way too much time talking about things and people who don't matter. It's way past time we got back to talking about the things and people who do. Namely, us. Don't know if you've heard, but hate crimes are on the rise. That's more than a little shocking because God knows there weren't any hate crimes going on before now. Why, there are people being attacked every minute of every day, and these vicious crimes are taking place in broad daylight. The brazen thugs attacking unarmed, unsuspecting minorities, and nobody seems to care. Oh, but did I mention that these hate crimes that the white media is obsessing about all of a sudden aren't happening to black people? None of the victims of these hate crimes happen to be black at all, but apparently the white media thinks that the assailants are, hence that makes it very much worth their time and effort. Now, black people are still leading the league when it comes to being the victims of hate crimes in the US and have been for the longest time. We've always been. And yet, for some strange reason, you've never seen the white media go into hysterics about this regarding black people. They always try to treat hate crimes against black people as isolated incidents. Black people are still the number one targets for hate crimes, except neither the racists in law enforcement nor the white media calls them hate crimes. Oh, they've always got their script at the ready. They got their talking points just absolutely rehearsed to a T. They'll look into it. See, a black person's attacked. We're going to look into it. We're suspecting it could be, but we're not going to call it a hate crime because we got to look into it. We've got to examine it. Hate crimes are just so hard to prove, and it's never clear if the attack fits the legal definition of a hate crime. And, well, we got to be careful about that. That's what happens whenever black people are the victims of a hate crime. We always got to make sure that we don't go jumping the gun. In fact, we should leave it alone, and truth be told, well, why be hasty? On the other hand, if they think they see an opportunity to accuse a black person of a so-called hate crime, if a black person even bumps into a non-black person on the street, before that black person can even say, "Excuse me," the white media and the DAs will immediately be declaring that it was a hate crime. Oh, they don't need to do an investigation. Oh, they don't need to sit back and look into it and we'll get back to you. It may not fit the definition. Oh, they can immediately determine this definitely fits the definition of a hate crime. Oh, hard to prove our behinds. Well, this is clear-cut hate crime. You know how those Negroes are. Amazing how that works. Let the accused be black and suddenly there's no need for an investigation. The incident fits the definition of a hate crime for sure. That is, before they even do an investigation. Just the fact that there's been a report of it, that's enough. This is the white media trying to keep up the steady drumbeat. Because while people are talking about the war in Ukraine, there's been an even longer, more vicious and violent war going on right here in the United States. And that's the white supremacist war against black people. And the media happen to be the propaganda arm of that war machine. Now, people have been talking about the federal lynching law that Biden just signed. Well, as we've seen with the trial of Ahmaud Arbery's murderers, they don't even want to enforce the hate crimes laws that are on the books when the victim is black and the assailant's white, that is. So what makes anyone think that this lynching law is going to be used to protect black people? But they make sure that they have the biracial vice president out there and some Negroes who are going to be claiming that this is so important ground. Bobby Rush has crawled out of whatever dungeon he was hiding in, and this turncoat former Black Panther who ain't worthy of the name. They got this guy, dragged him out of mothballs, and he's sitting here talking about how important this is. Been trying for 100 years to get a hate crime law passed, lynching law passed. Oh, God, someone take Uncle Rush and put him into bed. He needs a nap. The last time that anybody bothered to pay attention to this doddering old fossil was a few years back, when you had the Chicago police who broke into his congressional office and all themselves lounging all over the place, and lest I forget, they committed the unholy violation of eating his popcorn. You guys remember when he gave his little press conference talking about that? That hangdog expression he had on his face, man, I tell you, he was more broken up and more upset about that than he was the murder of Laquan McDonald. So, as always, the congressional black talkers have got their priorities in order. But for them, this group of corrupt would-be social climbers, they're looking out for themselves, so we better make sure that we do the same. We look out for ourselves. We ain't worrying about any of them. But all of this nonsense about trying to pretend as if, why, there's this epidemic of black people who are attacking non-black people, this is a white media narrative that's going on. This is part of the anti-black counteroffensive. Let's go ahead and find some black people, preferably young black people. If they can't disprove that black people are being targeted for these anti-black racist attacks, then what they'll do is they'll try to create a false equivalence, or at least a way to tell the public that, hey, you guys should get back on code. Remember, these niggers, they're out here, they're just getting over on people. Why? You're so concerned about them. No one's concerned about all of these niggers victims, all the people, all these black people, young black people are attacking. That's the white media narrative that they're trying to push. The orgy of phony hysteria regarding roving gangs of black youth who are attacking non-black people. This is the same stuff that they were doing regarding the Central Park 5 and such. It's just the same old playbook, same old thing, just more of it. This is part of a media war being waged by the propaganda arm of white supremacy to indoctrinate and propagandize people, return us to status quo ante, to the way that things were prior to the uprisings of Ferguson and Baltimore. The black grassroots pushed that needle hard, and now you got the white supremacist media who's trying to push it back in the other direction. We need some shameless anti-black racism to be returned. Sure, everybody knows that what's going on is more or less a lie, but that's the point. This is them trying to turn back the clock. The streets have way too much momentum. The black streets got way too much momentum now. So rather than fight a tide that's too strong, they're instead attempting to take our momentum and try to use it against us. They can't change the subject from all of these anti-black hate crimes. So instead what they're saying is, oh, we're going to talk about hate crimes. The issue is hate crimes. It's anti-black hate crimes. That's right, hate crimes, hate crimes. And then next thing you know, they're not talking about black people at all. Craft a law meant to facilitate coming after us. And then get some bootlicking Negroes out there to applaud it and say, good idea, we're all in favor. Why? Emmett Till would want it this way. Emmett Till knew how dangerous he was. He would want the feds to come after him too. And then in a couple of months, when we have the next heinous anti-black lynching that takes place, we'll be able to go to the Injustice Department and we can have knockdown, drag-out fights with Kristen Clark and Merrick Garland and the rest of that corrupt gang of scumbags who are going to be telling us the law just doesn't apply and we need to take a plea deal and why are you trying to go to trial and we should just try to take a deal. Yeah, the evidence is voluminous and we could bury these guys 5 ways from Sunday, but we should just take a deal and why the family will have peace if they know that all of these anti-black lynchings don't get punished. That's what they're trying to dial us in for. We were not the ones who put this in front of the people. This was not written to our specifications. So we got to be very clear about this. The status quo is attempting to reassert itself and trying to put forward the lie that black people are fine with, the same way Bill Clinton did. Well, the reason I had to lock up all the 94 crime bill, the reason I had to lock up all you niggers is because, you had some Negro preachers who were cheerleading for it. They were fine with it too. I can't give you any names, but take my word for it. They totally were in favor of it. The white media understands the value of being able to put a story out constantly, keep up that steady drumbeat, resume it as soon as possible, can't lose too much time. Young black people, especially young black males, they're out there attacking people in the streets. Hate crime, hate crime. This way, you can go ahead and have some people who start killing black people, especially young black males, and then claiming, why, I was the victim of a hate crime. I could see in his eyes, demonic little look in his eyes, the same lying anti-black racist script that they used regarding Mike Brown. Now, instead of having some thug with a badge who's going to be claiming I was afraid for my life, now this is meant to encourage any non-black person to say the same thing. This is meant to encourage them. This is meant to feed them the talking point. Just go ahead and say that the nigger was trying to attack you and we'll take it from there. We'll go ahead and signal boost it and say, yeah, see, all of these niggers who call themselves attacking non-black people have finally caught up with them, finally caught up with them. So for those Negroes out there who are still in denial, even at this late date, who are still desperately keeping their fingers crossed, pining away, holding their breath in the pathetic and futile hope that the same Jim Crow Joe Biden Injustice Department, who the Arbery family, especially his mother, had to fight to a standstill just to get them to do their job and take a slam dunk simple case conviction to force them to actually do their jobs. These guys are now going to turn around and they're actually going to be enforcing this lynching law on the behalf of black people. Yeah, because they've got such a great record of sticking up for black people thus far, don't they? The white media narrative is clear and undeniable. Everyone needs to be on the lookout for the big bad black man. Everybody needs to be ready to defend themselves. Well, except for black people. Black people need to trust and hope that the government is going to actually do their jobs. Well, over here in the B1, we're smarter than that. We understand that the same way that if a man is in the middle of a desert and he doesn't have any water, he's going to have to start digging and he's going to have to start producing some water. And if you happen to be in the middle of a fertile field and there's nothing growing there because nobody's bothered to plant any seeds or to sow any sort of crops, well, you're going to have to produce food. And if you live under white supremacy, you're going to have to also be prepared to produce justice. We'll continue with the Sunday evening address in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. So you got the white media, who's keeping up the steady drumbeat of the narrative that everybody needs to be on watch, on guard, ready to protect themselves against all these black people. Well, who's going to be protecting black people? Well, it looks like we're going to be on our own on that one, but that's fine. On Twitter, I highlighted for you the case of Corey Marianu Jr. This is a Florida father whose home was broken into by a local street gang calling itself the Pensacola Police Department. This violent gang of thugs, they were attempting a Breonna Taylor-style ambush on the Mariano family. And they had already gotten into the home when Mr. Mariano and his family were sleeping. Now, Mr. Marianu, he responded to this home invasion by firing on the criminals, a clear-cut case of self-defense. The criminals were repulsed by this defensive action. They then realized that their ambush had now failed, but Mr. Mariano's ordeal was only just beginning, because the street gang then called themselves accosting and arresting Mr. Mariano, and the so-called authorities charged this law-abiding citizen with a count of, get this, attempted murder of the police. That's what they were saying. He attempted to kill the police. They then arrested Mr. Mariano's children, putting them into a police car, including his 1-year-old child. Now, during this illegal action, the police caused the 1-year-old to be injured when the child fell, and the police have still not exactly been clear on how that happened. There are conflicting accounts that they've given. And on top of that, just to let you know, the cops clearly understood that they had done wrong. They tried to prevent the mother from taking the child to the hospital. Clearly, they were trying to avoid having any sort of paper trail for their crimes. They stepped in it big time, and they knew it. They knew that the only way that they could get their necks out of the noose on this one is if they could get the family to say that somehow they were to blame, or if they could find a way to break up the paper trail so that there wouldn't be a clear line of information as to the events of that night. The Thugs in Blue's pretense for the ambush on the Mariano family is that they had a search warrant for some kind of alleged shooting that took place, and they somehow thought that the Mariano family or someone at their home was somehow involved, though they couldn't explain that either. They were just basically giving all of this unsubstantiated rumors and hearsay, and they're not sure why they were at the house, and they were looking for something, and maybe someone had something to do with it, and we don't know how the child got injured. The taxpayer-funded street gangs, they create these situations. And then they have their fellow racists in the local DA's office attempt to punish anyone who defends themselves from these violent street thug attacks. Now, the Thug Patrol in Pensacola, they've been very quiet about their crime here, and it's clear the DA's attempts to manufacture a case against the Mariano family, especially Mr. Mariano, that case has failed. Their attempt to try to railroad him has failed. The police were eager to kill some black people. That's the reason why they were there. Crime hell. This was all about making sure that they continued to intimidate black people with a steady string of violent killings. And they were so eager, being down in Florida, The statewide clavern of Ron DeSantis, the American Nazi. But due to the quick action of Mr. Marino, this attempt to kill an entire black family failed. The police were just so sure that this ambush was going to go down without a hitch while you caught the people literally caught them sleeping. And they were just so certain that being in Ron DeSantis' statewide clavern that they were going to get all this support. This is going to be an easy one. They didn't even bother trying to give themselves plausible deniability. After over a month of attempting to wear Mr. Marino down in the hopes that they could force or coerce him to take a plea deal, just otherwise get him to give in the end, the corrupt DA's office was forced to drop the charges altogether, which they should never have brought in the first place. I mean, they were trying hard. They were, we're going to get this nigger one way or the other. It's the same thing that you saw that happened in the case of the murder of Breonna Taylor. You had the authority trying to figure out how do we force Kenneth Walker to take some sort of plea deal, but he wouldn't. And they got so desperate that when they finally were able to catch up with Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend, who was the one that they were allegedly trying to go after in the first place, you recall the DA put together a plea deal for him. He said, I'll drop all the charges against you. All I need is for you to make a statement saying that Breonna Taylor was involved in a drug operation. Sure, there were no drugs at Breonna Taylor's apartment. There were no drug paraphernalia. There was absolutely nothing illegal, not even so much as one marked dollar bill, but we got to find a way to justify the murder after the fact. And since we can't actually have any evidence, we don't have any evidence that she was involved in any crime, can we just get you to say that she was? That way we can go to the media and say, see, her boyfriend said that she was involved, He has no evidence, but just the fact that he said it, why, you can't argue with irrefutable evidence like his word, especially because we told him we'd drop all charges if he would. That's what they tried to do. And they tried the exact same thing here. White supremacy only has a small number of standard plays in their playbook. And they run them every single time because there are too many black folks who go for it. But slowly but surely, more black people are not going for it. Now, Mr. Marino's attorney, I should add, are from the Cochran firm, as in Johnny Cochran's firm. His law firm's still around, by the way. And still giving these racist DAs hell even from beyond the grave. Johnny Cochran is still the bane of these racist, illegal, out-of-control white supremacist prosecutors' so-called lives. Even in death, they still are feeling the sting of Johnny Cochran's whip on their backs. And the Cochran firm has also said that they intend to take legal action against the city and the police for this. Hopefully they can go after the would-be killers personally. Make sure that those bastards are held personally accountable. Sue them personally. Now, there's a lesson to be learned here. Whether it be Kenneth Walker, who defended himself from a thug patrol ambush which murdered Breonna Taylor, or Corey Pujols, he was the Dunkin' Donuts employee who defended himself from a racist customer, or Mr. Marino in this latest case. Black people have a right and a duty to defend themselves and those they care about when we come under attack. Now, you can't be waiting until the media decides that they're going to give support to black people protecting themselves. They're not going to glorify that. They're not going to support that. They're not going to be running any sort of investigation asking how many of these so-called police-involved shootings were in fact self-defense. Because the media always wants to make sure the police line is, well, so-and-so had no reason for even having a gun, much less firing in our direction. And then you actually look at the story and find, no, these guys broke into Mr. Marino's home. These guys broke into Breonna Taylor's apartment, came in guns blazing. Everything the police said were lies. That's the kind of stuff that they're not saying, and the reason why is they already know what the reason is. They know that these guys are dirty as hell. They know that these were not accidental shootings. It wasn't the result of, well, we had no choice. No, they came in looking to cause a fatality. And the white media's answer to that is, well, as black people, you don't want to be criticized, and why? We'll take the police's side, so you have a duty to just lay down and die and hope that they don't kill you. As a black person, you are obligated to simply lie there and hope that they don't pull a Laquan McDonald with you, or they don't just decide to shoot you dead like they did with Oscar Grant. Guys handcuffed lying on the ground, they killed him anyway. No, we are not waiting until ABC and NBC and CNN and MSNBC or any other white supremacist propaganda mill gives us permission to secure our safety. We're not holding up our hand and asking, well, would it offend you if we keep these people from killing us? We're not begging anyone for our lives. We are going to protect our lives. And we're also not going to be waiting for Jim Crow Joe or any other white supremacist in the White House to finally decide that they're going to be putting an end to these hate crimes. Black people are going to be making sure the best way to stop a hate crime is to prevent it. See, if Ahmaud Arbery had had the tools of self-defense on his person the day that those white supremacists chased him down and murdered him, he'd still be alive today. A number of black people who got lynched and who were killed with impunity, if they had had the means of self-protection, they would be alive today, but the white media would not be cheering them. And that's fine. We are not going to be begging for permission to preserve our lives any more than we would beg for our lives. We're not doing that at all. We are just going to make sure that nobody's going to be able to run up on us and just kill us with impunity, and then we have the white media making excuses for them afterwards and attempting to explain why the black person just had to die. That day is done. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Niam Rimbert, CJ Link, Alfonso Muhammad, Wendell, and Mandisa. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.